I'm not missing that dedication in Jerusalem. Without the airplane that we have that I bought from Tyler Perry, and I didn't pay anywhere. And Tyler's one of the greatest guys. He made that airplane so cheap for me, I couldn't help but buy it.
Well, my question then,
Welcome back to the Comic Reporter. And all right, look, Doug Ford giveth, and Doug Ford taketh away. But mostly Doug Ford giveth. The man is endless content, a bottomless pit of insanely bad taste and social disconnection who believes that there is simply no better way to stay in the news than to continuously prove how arrogantly uncaring and pathetically brain dead you are over and over until finally you do something so unhinged that your entire voter base begins to realize they might have made a horrible, horrible mistake. Because for the endless stream of maniacal, underthought, outrageous, and flamboyantly performative decisions that good old dilapidated Dougie decides to trot out for his substantially less dedicated voters, the taking Doug Ford is doing just doesn't create the return on investment that it used to. For those who don't know, it has become increasingly obvious that it is more likely Doug's incredibly overworked and heroically strained belt loops will tell him no than his own inner circle. The toxic positivity matrix this provincial government has nurtured into its final form decided that a $30 million private jet and the insanely high annual maintenance fees that come with that were a better solution to Doug Ford's traveling costs than his current method of $80,000 chartered jets. See, Doug, the problem is that when most human beings find themselves in the midst of a government-induced financial abortion, and belt-tightening is something they are told they will have to do for the sake of the country that obviously doesn't care if they live or die, their first reaction is rarely to ever go buy a private jet. Because, that'll be cheaper in the long run than their current methods of travel. In fact, most Canadians will see that level of asinine disconnection and realize that you are, in fact, exactly as mentally incompetent as they were told. Maybe even more so. Either that, or you are a maliciously destructive and no longer care at all about what is happening in the land you profess to care so much about. I've personally never encountered a public relations team that is so absolutely dedicated to the complete and total annihilation of their own credibility. Whoever told Doug that this semi-used, taxpayer-funded, pathetically underthought political nightmare was a good idea needs to be fired immediately. And if it was more than one person, then all of them need to go too. There is something deeply broken inside that morally decrepit, disgustingly unempathetic hellscape of a marketing team. Eventually, you have to say no, guys. You have to say no, or you have to go. And it's not just this decision, Dougie boy. Who can forget the multi-million-dollar anti-American television ad designed specifically to make a democratically elected president look bad to his own people? The one where he played loose and fast with the face and words of Ronald Reagan, turning Canada into the number one enemy of anyone who even has the loosest grasp on actual history. How about the extremely endearing threat to be the one to start open war with the US by turning off the power to the citizens of the socialist utopia of New York City or Michigan? Or how about the direct and pointed insult leveled directly at Crown Royal with an act so despicable it would have made Elizabeth May cry? If you want businesses to stay here, Doug, perhaps your best option is making that possible and not destroying their products on live TV. You might be wondering, how much exactly does Doug Ford spend on travel if he thought buying a private jet and paying millions of dollars in annual maintenance fees was the answer to his increasingly decadent travel costs? Just remember that Doug presents as an overfed, undereducated, inner tube shaped wannabe water park ride. The answer to the amount he spends on travel is higher than I can comfortably admit, even in a video designed to provide the catharsis Ontario needs right now. Because if you knew the amount, I might be held responsible for telling you, and that could be interpreted as incitement to violence. So I won't tell you. But I will say that you, as the voter, and Doug, as the politician, have two very different interpretations of what saving money means, if that hadn't become painfully obvious by now. I know that there are those who will say politicians and officials should have luxuries that make their lives easier because they do so much traveling and provide so much value for the people they are elected to represent. And to be honest, I don't entirely disagree with that. Very, very few people who have ever worked for a living hold any grudge towards anyone else who is able to amass enough wealth to afford their own private modes of transportation. Planes, boats, maybe a spaceship or two. Once the public gets past the obvious extravagance of such a purchase and gets over their performative outrage and the moral discussion of exactly how much money is too much money, everyone simply returns to their day and tries to mine their own success in the hopes that they may also someday create a future for themselves that they so envy in those who already have it. The difference here, Doug, is that you are a politician who ran on fiscal responsibility and personal accountability. And when you flirt with the idea that your millions of semi starving, geographically captive taxpayers owe you the luxury of a personal, private, executive class Challenger 650, those taxpayers tend to start recognizing that the food that isn't on their table might actually be due to the massive spending of the very premier who told them that he felt their pain. That said, we can at least take comfort in the knowledge that Doug knows just how fat he has become while riding on the backs of the average Ontarian working civilian. The jet was a 12-seater, allowing room for not just Doug, but at least 6 of his favorite traveling companions, while also having a cabin that was the widest in its class, a feature that is more like a necessity when you're flying around a human vacuum cleaner. Unfortunately for Doug, the public caught wind of the extravagant purchase and very quickly shut that shit down immediately, creating a political and optical backlash rivaled only by the destructive power of an earthquake too strong to be measured on the Richter scale. And rightfully so. We seem to be beyond the point where we can expect the people who lead this country or this province to even have the foggiest desire to keep whatever performative promise they made in order to gain enough public trust. And no, you cannot blame Donald Trump for you buying a plane, Doug. So now, because Doug and his delightfully delusional public relations team decided to read Ontarians as low IQ clapping seals instead of the increasingly desperate, previously rich, non stupid human beings they actually are, he now has to find a way to sell a $30 million plane after 2 days of ownership while also paying the overhead such a sale brings with it. This was a catastrophically bad decision made by what I had hoped were people who still had their brain stems connected to a spine made of something stronger than paper mache. But once again, I am proven too optimistic regarding the mental health of leadership and support of the Progressive Conservative Party. Something like this doesn't seem like it can be called an accident. Doug's subsequent apology and acknowledgement of the public outcry feels as if it may fall just a little short. Doug, you're going to need to get your office under control. Normally, I'd say we simply can't afford many of these decisions or your nonsensical approach to the preservation of the funds within our province, but we're beyond being able to afford any more of these things at all. This is just another bumble in a long line of choices even Beavis and Butthead would find embarrassing. When times get tough and people start to truly struggle, they tend to watch their leaders very, very closely. And yes, that means all eyes are on Doug Ford. Welcome to the spotlight, sir. Consider me the public catharsis. Maybe you should fix it. Or maybe Doug should hand the province over to someone who has a hope in hell of fixing it. Now, for the listener, if you stuck around all the way to the end, I hope you enjoyed that complete and total evisceration of everyone's favorite politically motivated Muppet. Hope this commentary and video hits with the same force as 80% enriched uranium and has the scorched earth effect of a World War II napalm attack. I hope to get to the point where you see one of these politicians do something stupid and your first thought is, boy, I can't wait to see how many pieces the comic reporter can rip this person into, because that's the goal. So if you liked it, like and subscribe. If you didn't, maybe you'll like the next one. And just, guys, try not to starve on your way to hitting the like button. Take care.